How to FC more maps in Osu game. So to first understand this, we need to dive deep into some neuroscience and discuss a chemical called dopamine. So dopamine is a chemical that is released in our brain and is responsible for us to be motivated to pursue things that are outside of our bodies. It tracks success and pleasure, and it makes us feel good when it is released. So dopamine, there's two types. So there's like two levels. There's like a low level. It makes you burnt out. It makes you feel like you have burnout. And a high level, which makes it feel like you have endless motivation to do things, right? And before I talk about the rest of it, I just want to shout out my Discord server. You can join it through the link in the description or in the video right here. It's an FCing community. We're probably going to do a lot of stuff like weekly multi, also in-house tournaments, 1v1s, all that junk. So join it if you're interested. So there's a thing called dopamine peaks and baselines. So dopamine baselines are when your dopamine are at a usual level. And then we have dopamine peaks where if we do something crazy, like in Osu, when we get a crazy play or like a high level PP, our dopamine goes up. But then afterward, what's really interesting is that our baseline dopamine actually goes down. So we start from here, now we go from here, and then afterwards we go to here. See this difference? We are actually at a lower level. And dopamine actually does the same thing where if you purposely go downwards, so if you go this way, then your dopamine levels baseline actually goes up. And if we have high levels of baseline, we are more motivated to do things, more motivated to get some more PP and FC more. And if we have low levels, we are less motivated to get that PP and FC more. We are essentially burnt out, right? If we're at these low levels of dopamine. And having low levels of dopamine feels really miserable. It feels super bad. But if you have high levels of dopamine, you'll feel really good. But there's also a thing called peak to baseline ratio. So to explain this, let's say you're a low dopamine. So let's say you're like a homeless guy with like zero money, right? Say you buy a lottery ticket and you win $1 million. So your dopamine is at here, right? But then it just peaked to go all the way over here. That huge difference is how good you feel, basically. But let's say you're a millionaire, right? Like you already have a shit ton of money and you just won that $1 million as well. So your dopamine levels are like all the way up here, like high, right? So we established that it is right here for $1 million. So your dopamine difference is only gonna be that. It's only a little bit, right? So the guy who won that $1 million would be like, oh sweet, $1 million. But the guy who's homeless, that John's actually life changing, right? He's about to get a house, bro. He's about to get all this, John, bro. He's about to get super crazy. So those are how the dopamine peak to baseline ratios work, and we want to utilize them so we can take advantage of how we can be more motivated to FC more maps. So basically, high dopamine is good. We are more motivated to FC more maps in Osu. Low dopamine is bad. It makes us feel bad, and we are not motivated to FC at all. And we're most likely not to FC if we're at a low level. High is good, low is bad. How can we improve our dopamine levels then? So there's two ways you can do it that I recommend. You can either have caffeine, especially from coffee and yerba mate. So these two are scientifically proven to increase your dopamine receptors and to protect them. So that essentially means your dopamine receptors go up. So that means your dopamine baseline is going to go up if you engage in caffeine from coffee or yerba mate. And then cold showers. We can take cold showers right before we do an Osu session, and that will increase our dopamine baseline by 2.5x for 3 hours. So most dopamine peaks, usually your dopamine baseline would go down after a bit, like after like a little bit, but cold showers are actually sustained for 3 hours. I don't know how exactly it does it, but that's just a result. And there are other ways to increase your dopamine baselines. I don't exactly recommend some of these, but one of them is chocolate. It increases your dopamine by 1.5 times. Sex, both the pursuit and the act of it. Most of you guys probably don't do it. It 2 times your dopamine baseline. Nicotine, it's 2.5x, just like the cold showers. However, it's very short-lived. And then we have cocaine, which 2.5x's. Like, I don't recommend these drugs, right? Amphetamine, which actually 10x's your dopamine receptors. Exercise, if you enjoy the exercise, that 2x's it. But exercise, if you don't enjoy it, there's no increase at all. And then cold water, right? 2.5x. So I especially recommend caffeine from coffee or yerba mate. Probably shouldn't do it if you're like super sensitive to it. Like I am very sensitive to caffeine, and if I drink a little bit, I am very hyper. But cold showers, go ahead. That sounds OD. So here's another way that you can improve your dopamine level. You want to do a dopamine fast, which in the context of Osu is basically taking a break. If we take a break from Osu, then our dopamine levels are basically going to stabilize and go up and up. To understand this, we want to address something called addiction. Many of you guys are probably familiar with addiction, but addiction is when, like an example of nicotine, like smoking a cigarette. Like the first time we smoke nicotine, right, we get that initial really crazy high. We're like, wow, that felt amazing, right? But then we want to do it again. We want that same high as before, right? And we do it again. But the next time you do it, it actually doesn't feel as good, right? You're like, wow, it didn't feel as good. Well, maybe I should do it again so I can try to get back there again, right? You do it again, it just keeps going lower, lower and lower and lower and lower. It feel as good. And eventually, it barely increases your dopamine levels at all. And this is what is called addiction. That is when you are not able to get your first dopamine level increase. You pursue that, but you don't get it after you do it many times. And in the context of nicotine, cigarette addiction is pretty bad. You can get lung cancer. That's just one off the top of my head. And the same thing can happen in Osu. So you can get addicted to Osu, and the first time you play it, you're like, wow, that felt amazing. But the next time, it just doesn't feel as good as good. Over time, your dopamine levels are just going to go down and down and down and down. Because as we addressed previously, when we spike our dopamine, it goes down the baseline, right? So your baseline, if you're addicted to Osu, there's a chance that you are at a low dopamine, so you're less motivated to FC maps and get PP. So if we want to revert this chain, we want to take a break from Osu. Just don't play Osu for a bit. once you come back, your dopamine levels are going to be stabilized. I want to emphasize that you will get rusty if you do this. Unlike FCing, your baseline levels are going to increase, but your skill level will go down a little bit, but it will take a bit just to get back to where you were. So it's no biggie, because I think the dopamine is way more important than like the skill level jump. And then here's another thing you can do. You want to change your focus from getting dopamine from the spike to getting dopamine from engaging the effort itself. What this means is that you want to get dopamine from playing the game itself, and you want to basically enjoy the game. Like, please enjoy a game for Root Tree, right? What this will do is that it will steadily increase your dopamine as you play, and you won't have as hard as like dips. And I just want to go down to this next section where that is actually called the growth mindset. So the growth mindset is when your dopamine goes up every time you play. So how I imagine this is that every time I play a map and I finish it, then my XP bar, like I have imagined like an XP bar in my head, like the XP bar, it increases a bit, right? Every time I finish a map. That means I got a little better every time I played a map. And this is the growth mindset. This is actually really good, because if you have this mindset, then your dopamine increases and you're more motivated to play the map. And then now here's another mindset you can have that I think is really important: the positive mindset. To emphasize the positive mindset, I want to talk about two scenarios first. So first, we have the milkshake scenario. So it was a study done on two groups. They were given the same milkshake, right? One group was told that the milkshake was low calorie and was not as like fulfilling, right? And the other group was told that it's just a regular milkshake, high calorie, it's very indulgent, right? The group that thought it was a low calorie, their guts were actually not as satisfied or full, right? But the other group that thought it was a normal milkshake, they were actually pretty satisfied, more satisfied. That's the power of belief. They believed that it was a low calorie, so they were less satisfied. But the group that was believed that it is actually very high calorie, they were more satisfied. And then here's another scenario: hotel workers, two groups similar to the milkshake. So one group was given a training video on, okay, you're gonna do some hotel work, but they emphasize how the hotel work actually is very good for them and like is exercise for them, essentially increases your health. The other group was told it's just regular hotel work and just whatever, right? The group that believed that it is an exercise group, they actually saw like more health benefits: a slimmer waistline, less weight, like more stabilized blood pressure, and lower cholesterol levels, like all the good things, right? The other group like was like no change, basically. So this is the power of belief, and how we can apply this to OSU is that we have positive mindsets. We want to believe that when we play a map that we will FC the map, because if we believe that we will easily FC the map, then you are more likely to FC it, right? We don't want to have the mindset that is like, oh, if I play this map, I'm just gonna choke, or I'm just not gonna pass, right? Those mindsets, like, why would we have them, right? They're actually bad for us and make us not motivated to do well. But if we have the mindset of like, of course we can FC this, we have an expectation to follow, and we want to meet our own expectations that we made for ourselves, right? But we also want to have realistic expectations. So let's say we're used to FCing 6 stars, but now we're like, oh, that means I can easily FC 8 stars, right? Like, no, that's not how it works, right? We want to be able to FC within our skill range. Another thing, nerve control. OSU might be more of a mental game than a physical game. Nerves are a very big part of it. When you're about to FC a map, you might be familiar with get all shaky and your nerves are very like, oh, your heartbeat's increased, you're very shaky. And the reason why it's happening is because the adrenaline is about to increase, and we're about to get that dopamine spike if we get that crazy thing, that crazy play, right? So we're getting excited for it. However, this could be detrimental to us, right? Previously, when we were FCing the map, we were focused on playing the map itself, right? Focusing on actually getting that combo, getting the good act, getting the good notes hit, right? But now our thoughts are shifted on, okay, I'm about to get the crazy play. Wait, but what if I choke? Wait, what if I'm about to get the crazy play? Wait. This is going to give me so much PP, right? Our thoughts are shifted to that, which is actually going to disrupt our playing, and we're more likely to choke. We want to be mindful of this, basically. We want to be more present about this. So how we can do this is through meditation. Many of you guys might not be familiar with it. Maybe you guys have heard of it before. It's a practice that you do for a couple minutes a day where you just like focus on your breathing and be present about your breathing and every like part about it, right? You just want to be present and be in the moment, basically, when you do meditation. And meditation can improve your FCing ability because you will basically be more present while you FC. So let's say you're about to FC and you're about to have that thought that like, oh, what if I choke? Well, if you meditated, you'll be aware that you had that thought, and you're gonna be like, wait, I should focus on playing the map. Why am I thinking about that, right? And if you do that, you're gonna be more likely to FC, right? If you're more focused on playing the map. But then here's another thing. We also want to avoid things that decrease our attention span and decrease our mental health and make us less focused. So in my personal experience, I found that social media apps like Reddit or TikTok, like apps of endless scroll, right? You can easily like spike your dopamine, get easily addicted, as we previously addressed, because we see like all these crazy like stuff that would spike our dopamine, like the good video, the funny video, the sexy video, whatever. And then we keep going and going, but that will actually decrease our dopamine levels, make our mental health worse and our focus worse, our attention span worse. So if we engage in those, we're less likely to FC stuff, right? We're gonna be less likely to do things. We're gonna be less present. I personally think that if you want to avoid that stuff, like if you are dependent on it, just try doing it less, but probably is the best move just to avoid that stuff altogether. I personally not used that stuff in years. Like sometimes like every like couple months or so, I would probably catch myself on it or something, but I'll be like, wait, what am I doing, right? Final remarks. To summarize this video, engage in the effort of playing OSU and gain dopamine from the effort itself. Try caffeine coffee or yerba mate to increase dopamine levels, or try ice bath to increase your dopamine levels so you're more motivated to FC. And also have a positive mindset and think that but of course I will FC, right? And try to be more present while playing through meditative processing. I know this video is kind of sciencey in a bit, and maybe like some of it might come off as speculation, but trust me guys, this stuff actually works. I've personally done it myself, and I've seen myself FCing way more when I implement these. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this is a long video. Please join my Discord server if you want to join an OSU community that's growing every day. I want to make it the best Discord server ever. I'm probably gonna have weekly multis and tournaments and 1v1 stuff pretty soon. I just want to shout out my channel. I post clips. I post these guys, of course. I also post polls. If the clips get annoying, daily ones, you can just mute my channel. It's really no biggie. I also want to shout out my people. I want to shout out Salty the Scrub. Shout out to Air You. Shout out to Rectagon. Shout out to Mr. Chicken. Shout out to Splixbox, my tech support in the OSU server. And I just want to shout out my boy Tank. Shout out my boy Julius. Shout out my boy Justin. Shout out my boy Trevor. I was just want to shout out all my people, bro. But yeah, subscribe for more guys in the future. Thank you for your interest in science.